Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to the Kitchen of Adventure. It's the Kitchen of Adventure here at the Rustic Von Lodge. I needed to make this video with a really actiony, exciting background. So here I am in the kitchen. So today's video is a sort of video I don't do too often because today I'm talking about movies. This is a kind of a response video to a couple of videos that were done by Grammaticus over at his fantastic channel and Steve Donoghue over at his amazing channel. They both came up with their own lists of the 10 greatest action movies of all time. And both of their lists are completely wrong. As usual, when they make a movie list, their lists are just wrong. So I thought it was important for me to do something unusual and make a video about action movies. And what are actually the 10 greatest action movies of all time? Since Grammaticus got it wrong, Grammaticus had some good videos. He had some good movies on his video. But except for he got a couple of them right. But otherwise, he had a list that had some good action movies on it, but definitely not the greatest of all time, not even close. And Steve Donoghue is a professional book critic, and he is one of the greatest book critics alive today. He could be the greatest book critic alive today. He's not a movie critic. Why is he not a movie critic? Well, look at his list. Yeah. Makes it pretty clear. And it's not entirely their fault that they got their movies wrong, because they did hamper themselves with some pretty silly rules. Like they recently did a science fiction movie list, so they're like, oh, we can't put any science fiction movies in here or anything that might be sci-fi, and we can't do any war movies, and we can't do this, we can't do that. So they saddled themselves with a bunch of silly rules. And as a result, they have lists that do not have the 10 greatest action movies of all time. And even they couldn't really stick to their lists. I think Steve on his list has 300 on his list, which is clearly a war movie. It's about a major battle in the Persian Wars. It's an action movie, and it's also a comic book movie, but it's also a war movie. So, here's the thing. Movies can be more than one type of thing. You can have a movie like The Thing, which is a horror movie, and it's a science fiction film. Or Alien, for example, is a horror movie and a science fiction film. Aliens is science fiction, horror, and action. So a movie could be more than one thing, and you shouldn't try to limit yourself. Because if you put too many rules as far as that goes, you're going to clearly miss the 10 greatest action movies of all time, which I am talking about today. Now, because this is a booktube channel, I would not think of making a list like this without referring to a book. In this case, one of the most important and useful reference books ever compiled. And that would be, of course, Action, the action movie A to Z. This was put together by Marshall Julius, and this was published in 1996. Coincidentally, 1996 was right around the time when the golden age of the action film was coming to a close. What are you talking about, you say? The golden age of the action film? I've never heard of such a thing. Allow me to inform you about this bit of important American culture of which you might be unfamiliar. There is a golden age of the action film. It began right around 1980, and it finished up right around the mid to late 1990s. Certainly by the time that The Matrix came out, it was over. And if it wasn't already over, The Matrix would have killed it. The Matrix, which was a good movie, but it was also full of CGI-produced stunts and special effects and shenanigans. And it changed action movies forever, and not entirely for the better. In the golden age of the action movie, most of the stunts were really done by stunt people, and there were no CGI enhancements, practical effects, stuff like that made the action seem a little more, real. As opposed to the cartoon nonsense you will get in some modern action movies. I mean, just think to some of the special effects in films like The Black Panther, for example, which is otherwise a good movie, but some of the special effects in that movie are terrible. And you have weightless CGI characters kind of floating around. It's bad. And a lot of movies are guilty of that. I'm not against CGI, computer-generated effects, really, but they're used badly, frequently. And they basically killed a lot of what was great about the great action films. So most of the films I'm talking about today, I will finally get to them, I swear, are from the golden age of the action film. Of course, there were good action movies before this, there were good action movies after this, but most of them are from that period of time. And they are certainly all here in this book, which I made reference to. Very helpful book, if you could ever find it. It has, instead of stars, it has little guns, which is appropriate. It's when you're talking about, action, it's good to have that. Some of the movies don't do so well, like A Force of One only got a gun and a half, and it has little sections on great action actors, So this is a very valuable reference book, which I used to help compile this list. Also, I will have you know, I have great confidence in the films on this list because I watched them. I've watched all of them hundreds of times. I've seen every single movie listed here hundreds of times, just to make sure that they're, as good as I'm saying that they are. So let's get right to it. These are the greatest, beyond dispute. There's no dispute here. And if you're going to see this list and you see a lot of familiar movies, it's because these are clearly the greatest action movies of all time. Clearly. Okay, number 10. Number 10. Going 10 to 1 like we do in this sort of list. Police Story from 1985. Police Story from 1985. Directed by Jackie Chan. Of course, this is Jackie Chan. And this movie is insane. The craziest thing about this movie is that Jackie Chan survived it. Some of the stunts and some of the things that he does in this movie are just, certainly this is, the things that happen in this movie would never be done today. They just wouldn't. It would just, no amount of insurance in any country now would cover this stuff that Jackie Chan does. This movie is wild, and the fights are incredible, and it's Police Story at number 10. If you have not seen it, you need to see it, so you could be properly, cultured. Number 9, Rambo, First Blood, Part 2 from 1985, starring Sylvester Stallone in possibly his greatest role. Well, his greatest role is Rocky, really, let's face it. But this comes close. It's Rambo, directed by George P. Cosmatos. Now, this is First Blood Part 2. First Blood is actually the better film. Let's be honest. First Blood is a better movie. This is a better action movie, though. And you should watch it just for its cultural significance, because this was a big deal in the mid-'80s. When this movie was huge, and everybody knew who Rambo was. Rambo at the time was like Sherlock Holmes or Tarzan. He was just somebody everybody knew who Rambo was. And this movie has over-the-top action and violence and insanity. It's something else, and you probably already seen it. Let's be honest. Now, there were other Rambo movies, like this was followed by Rambo of Arabia, I think. And there were some other Rambo movies that came after this that were confusingly titled. But if you if you only watch one, well, watch First Blood. That's a better film. But as far as action movies go, you need to see it. It's Rambo, First Blood Part 2. Of course, it's in the top 10. Number 8, Highlander from 1986, directed by Russell Macaulay. I can't speak. Anyway, it's Highlander. They're making a remake to this, I hear, but there can be only one. I wish. They made some really terrible sequels to this. Don't watch those other Highlander movies. Just watch the first one. It's a masterpiece. I swear it's a masterpiece. It has everything 80s you want in an 80s movie. And a guy running around with a sword cutting people's heads off. It's a work of genius. And it has some cool songs from Queen. They made a TV show off of this movie, which I never really watched. Should I watch that show? I don't know. But you should watch the movie. It was great. It was great, I swear. Number 7. This is the oldest movie on this list, but it's completely awesome. Enter the Dragon from 1973, starring the great Bruce Lee. The great Bruce Lee, and this is Bruce Lee's greatest film, Enter the Dragon, about a martial arts competition on an island that's covering up a bunch of evilness. And, you know, if Bruce Lee being a badass isn't enough, you also have one of the greatest American actors of all time in it, John Saxon, and Jim Kelly. I mean, why wouldn't you watch this movie? It's incredible. I've seen this movie probably 200 times or more. It's Enter the Dragon from 1973. It's amazing. Number 6, The Road Warrior from 1981. Mad Max 2 was its original title. Here in America, it was just The Road Warrior from 1981, directed by George Miller. George Miller did all of the Mad Max movies. There have been 4 of them. 3 of them have been good. I'm not a huge fan of Thunderdome. But, you know, 3 of them are really, really good. And this is probably the best one, The Road Warrior. It's my feeling that this is the best one. It's incredible, The Road Warrior. It's just like supercharged adrenaline nonsense. I'll drive that tanka. It's a great movie, The Road Warrior. Next, we're into the top 5 now. Top 5. Number 5 is RoboCop from 1987. Of course it's RoboCop. This magnificent masterpiece of incredible violence, RoboCop. Directed by Paul Verhoeven. I think it's Verhoeven. I don't know. But he makes great movies. And this was awesome. RoboCop. I mean, RoboCop had to be on this list. If you don't know why RoboCop's on this list, watch it, and then you will understand. This movie is just so fantastic. Yeah, that was RoboCop. Now, number 4, speaking of masterpieces of cinema, number 4, The Killer from 1989, directed by the great action director John Woo. I think this might be, I don't know how controversial this would be. I think this is John Woo's best movie. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, The Killer. This movie is, when I first saw this movie, I couldn't believe what I was watching. This movie is just, I mean, I literally couldn't believe the outrageous violence and the crazy stuff that happens in this. Also very melodramatic drama. It's a very melodramatic drama. It's amazing. This movie, The Killer, it's amazing. It'll blow your mind if you haven't seen The Killer. I mean, these movies from John Woo have been endlessly copied by Hollywood, but this is the real deal. The Killer. It's the real thing. So we're in the top 3, and you probably know every single movie that's coming up because they are clearly the greatest action movies ever made. Number 3, Die Hard from 1988, directed by John McTiernan. And you might think, my goodness, this isn't number 1, because Die Hard is a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. It's also my favorite Christmas movie of all time. It's a great Christmas movie. Remember, movies can be more than one thing. And it's a masterpiece of action. I mean, Die Hard everybody knows how great Die Hard is. I'm not the only one who's seen this movie over 100 times. It's Die Hard. I don't think any of the sequels were as good as the first Die Hard. But the first Die Hard is, it's crazy good. Die Hard. What more do you need to say? You just say Die Hard and you know. Number 2, what could be better than Die Hard? Terminator 2, Judgment Day from 1991. From 1991, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Yes, I think Terminator 2 is actually better than Die Hard as an action film. It's just crazy good. I think, much like the First Blood series, or the Rambo series, I think probably the Terminator is probably a better film overall. Probably. If I was doing a top 20 action movies, the Terminator would be on that list. But I think Terminator 2 works better than the Terminator as an action film. This is just action on top of action, on top of more action, and action after that. You know, it's an amazing film. And it's, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger's finest work. And that's saying something. So now number 1. What could possibly be number 1? Well, number 1, of course, is not just the greatest action movie of all time. It's possibly the greatest movie of all time. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark from 1981, directed by Steven Spielberg. Yes, it's a classic for a reason. It's amazing. When I went to see this, I couldn't believe it. I actually saw the trailers for this, and I was like, it's just some movie with some guy in a hat. Why would I want to see that movie? Because I was into like monsters and spaceships and stuff. At that time, in 1981, I was 10. But I went to see this movie, and my mind was blown. This was the most exciting thing I had ever seen in my life. And it's still one of the most exciting films you could possibly see. There's so much that's great about this movie, not just about the action. The character, of course, of Indiana Jones is amazing. He was great in all 3 of his movies. There were only 3 Indiana Jones movies, just so you know. You might have heard that there were others. But really, if it wasn't made in the 80s, there were only 3 Indiana Jones movies, and they were all great. They were all great. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, the greatest action movie of all time. Of course it is. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones. You can't top Indiana Jones as an action hero. Until he turns 80 or something. But who's going to make a movie about an 80-year-old Indiana Jones? No one's going to do that. That'd be crazy. Anyway, there you go. Those are my picks. Carefully researched. Okay, guys. We'll catch you next time.